Sometimes it seems to me that I have always lived on the edge. I cannot recall a time when I was simply calm. I needed that adrenaline rush, that feeling when your heart beats faster than your mind can come up with excuses. Perhaps that was my mistake. I got used to confusing risk with life. When I turned 20, I bought my first car, an old '67 Mustang. It was in terrible condition, rusty, with cracks in the windshield, but the sound of the engine made me feel alive. I drove at night on the empty highways of California, the wind tearing at my hair, and somewhere deep inside I believed that this was what I was made for. Speed was like a revelation, like freedom. Then came business, career, marriage. Everything seemed to become grown up and stable. Sophia, my wife, said she was never bored with me. We met at a party where I was arguing with my friends about who would jump off the pier into the icy water. Of course, I jumped. She laughed then and said, "You're an idiot, but there's something dangerous about you." I liked the way she said it. It was like a compliment. But over the years, I noticed that the more stable my life became, the more I missed that feeling of risk. The rush, the uncertainty. I invested money in risky startups, participated in crazy negotiations, did everything to feel like I was on the edge again. Even in marriage, I subconsciously looked for something that would make my blood boil again. Speed, risk, adrenaline, it wasn't just a hobby. It became an addiction. I knew that normal people calm down, grow up, and seek comfort. But I was looking for danger. I needed the feeling that everything could collapse at any second. And now, looking back, I realize that addiction hasn't gone away. It just changed form. When I first felt that same thrill, not behind the wheel, not on the track, but next to a woman I shouldn't have touched, I realized I was back in the same cycle. Only this time, the speed was different. And the consequences were immeasurably worse. Laura showed up at the office in early spring. We had just finished a difficult project, I was squeezed like a lemon, and to be honest, I wasn't expecting anything. She walked into the conference room, introduced herself briefly, Laura, the new marketing director, and smiled. Not just politely, but like someone who knows that all eyes are already on her. I don't know how to explain it, but some people seem to bring energy with them. They make the room a little warmer. She was like that. Not loud, not provocative, just confident, calm, a little daring. I didn't think it was dangerous at the time. I just felt a slight surge, as if a motor had turned on inside me. We started working together on a couple of campaigns. At first, everything was professional. Reports, meetings, brainstorming sessions. But then there were the looks. Those moments when you meet each other's eyes and turn away, breathless. I caught myself waiting for her messages, checking to see if she was passing by my office. It all seemed innocent, but deep down I already knew it wasn't just professional interest. I was drawn to her. Not because I wanted to cheat. No, not like that. I was drawn to the feeling I had lost. To an inner explosion, to a new risk. Laura had everything that provoked me. Energy, unpredictability, the light scent of coffee, and confidence. Once, after a meeting, we lingered in the conference room. Everyone had already left, and she said, "Michael, sometimes you look as if you're waiting for me to make the first move." I froze. She smiled. And left. I couldn't sleep all night. I knew it was a red zone. That behind it lay destruction, pain, betrayal. But that's what made it even more attractive. I didn't know then that this new energy would be the beginning of the end. I just felt that somewhere deep inside, the person I had once tried to leave behind was coming back to life, addicted to speed, adrenaline, and playing with fire. For a long time, I tried to convince myself that nothing was happening, that it was just flirting, a harmless game between adults. In America, it's normal. Light humor, exchanging glances, flirting. But deep down, I felt that this was no longer a game. It was anticipation. Quiet, pulsating, inevitable. We began to run into each other more often. By chance, although we both knew that there were no coincidences. Coffee in the morning at a nearby cafe, short conversations in the elevator, jokes that only we understood. And all of it was charged with electricity, the same tension I once felt behind the wheel when the speedometer needle passed 100. I remember the day when everything changed. It was Friday evening, the office was already empty, and we stayed behind to finish writing a presentation. She sat next to me, the scent of her perfume mingling with the coffee and the silence. I said something insignificant, that the project was finally complete, and suddenly she put her hand on my wrist. Just for a second, but that second seemed to punch a hole in time. The world shrunk to that touch. I could hear my own breathing, blood pounding in my temples. She didn't say anything. Neither did I. We just looked at each other until it became clear. It was too late to back out. After that, everything changed. We started writing to each other late at night. We shared thoughts, stories, dreams that we didn't share with others. It became our secret. A small, dangerous world that no one else could enter. I knew it was already a betrayal, even if we weren't physically intimate yet. Because betrayal doesn't start with the body, it starts with a thought. From the moment you allow yourself to want someone else. I tried to stop. Several times I deleted her messages, promising myself that tomorrow it would all end. But the next morning I was looking for her gaze again. Waiting again. I used to think I was in control of the risk, that I could play with fire without getting burned. But now I realized, I was already on fire. And the closer she got, the less I wanted to save myself. Everything didn't collapse in an instant, rather like glass that cracks and then suddenly shatters under its own weight. That night, I was with Laura at a hotel in Santa Monica. We told each other it was just this once. That it would end after that no one would find out. Lies, of course. We both knew it hadn't been just this once for a long time. It was an escape, from ourselves, from life, from routine. I remember lying next to her, staring at the ceiling, and suddenly feeling not excitement, not ecstasy, but silence. Oppressive, unfamiliar silence. The adrenaline I had been chasing suddenly evaporated, and only emptiness remained. I came home late. Sophia was sitting in the kitchen, in her pajamas, with a cup of tea. The lights were dim, there was the smell of mint and silence. She looked at me calmly and said only 2 words. I know. I didn't ask what exactly she knew. I didn't deny it, I didn't make excuses. It would have been pointless. She knew not only about Laura, she knew what I had become. A person who cannot be satisfied with a world without risk, without danger. A person who is capable of destroying what was once real. I wanted to say something, but there was a lump in my throat. She didn't cry or scream. She just looked at me as if she were seeing me for the first time. You've always sought speed, Michael, she said quietly. Only now have you finally understood where it leads you. I went outside. The night was cold, the city was asleep. Somewhere in the distance the ocean roared. I got in the car, turned on the headlights, and just sat there. My hands were shaking. I didn't know where to go. All the roads I had been racing down suddenly became dead-end. I thought betrayal was a moment of passion. But in reality, betrayal is a moment of silence, when you are alone with your truth for the first time. When you realize that everything you were chasing after was never worth what you lost. That night, I realized it was over. Not just with Emma. With the version of myself that I once thought was alive. After that evening, the house seemed different. The same smell of coffee in the morning, the same photos on the walls, but it was as if someone had taken the warmth out of the air. Sophia hardly spoke. She didn't make a scene or ask questions. She just lived nearby like someone who was tired of fighting. A week later, she packed her things and left to stay with her sister in Austin. No goodbyes. No reproaches. She just said, I need time. The house was empty. For the first time in a long time, I heard silence. Real, deafening, lingering silence. No calls, no messages, no expectations. And in that silence, I realized for the first time how loudly the emptiness inside me was beating. Work no longer saved me. My colleagues avoided conversation, and Laura quit a month later, quietly, without a word. After she left, the office became like a sterile room, everything in its place, but lifeless. I sat at my computer, opening emails, closing them, unable to concentrate. I used to think that risk made life more exciting. That without it, everything turns into a gray swamp. But now I understand. Risk without meaning is just a way to numb yourself. A way to escape. Sometimes I would go out on the highway late at night and just drive. No destination, no direction. The headlights caught glimpses of the road, and for a second I felt like I used to be again, alive. But then the emptiness would come. Like cold air that chills you to the bone. Sophia didn't call. I didn't call either. I had no right to. All I could do was look at an old photo of us laughing, wet from the rain, and think, when exactly did I stop being the man she loved? I realized that adrenaline isn't life. It's just a way to drown out fear. The fear of being ordinary, predictable, vulnerable. I was always looking for thrills because I didn't know how to be quiet. And now silence was all I had left. Every night I fell asleep thinking that maybe she would call tomorrow. Or maybe I would finally stop waiting. But neither happened. Only mourning again and again. And an empty house where only my own footsteps echoed. More than a year has passed. Time does not heal, it just makes the pain familiar. People say, you have to move on. But no one explains where exactly that on is. I sold that old Mustang. Not because I wanted to, but because I realized I couldn't look at it anymore without feeling ashamed. Too many memories. Night roads, speed, noise, lights. Everything that used to feel like freedom now reminded me of how easily I traded stability for chaos. Sometimes I still see Sophia, by chance, at the supermarket in a cafe. We nod to each other. Her eyes are calm, but they no longer have that soft light that once warmed me. And I don't blame her for that. She deserves peace. I deserve the consequences. I go to therapy. It sounds cliché, but that's where I first said out loud, I wasn't addicted to women. I was addicted to the feeling of living on the edge. My therapist nodded and said, you're confusing life with survival. They're different things. And he's probably right. Now my evenings are quiet. Sometimes I sit on the balcony, listen to the noise of the city, and drink water instead of whiskey. Sometimes I call my father, just to talk for no reason. I no longer chase thrills and excitement. I am learning to be at peace. I am learning to breathe without expecting disaster. Recently, I drove along the same highway where I used to race until dawn. The wind was blowing against the windows, the engine was purring smoothly, and suddenly I caught myself thinking that I didn't want to speed up. I just drove. Slowly, calmly, feeling the road stretch out beneath my wheels, and for the first time in a long time, I felt no fear. I don't know if everything can be fixed. Probably not. But maybe the point is not to fix things, but to understand them. To stop running one day and just stay. I still think about Sophia. Sometimes I dream that one day we'll meet somewhere, not as exes, but as people who have come a long way. She'll smile, and I won't try to get anything back. I'll just say, thank you. And maybe that will be the beginning. Or, finally, the real end.